One of my greatest phobias is to die from a bonk on the head. Oh, hello. No. Is it off? Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Hello. Okay. Thanks, y'all. One of my greatest phobias is to die from a bonk on the head. I believe this is because it seems undignified and silly all at once, reminiscent of being hit on the head by a rubber dodgeball in elementary school. The sound it made, cartoonish, while the sting on your face burning tears of embarrassment into your eyes. Expiring from a bonk on the head might conjure imagery of X's for eyes and a limp tongue out of the corner of one's mouth. Say, from being bonked on the head with a frying pan, for example. Being crushed by something is different. There is much less of a humorous aspect to that demise. But a bonk? Well, that's just a goofy way to go. So, I was having my nose inspected by a wonderful esthetician on a moody afternoon in May. I had been bitten on the nose by my very own cowardly dog just a few months earlier, and I was discussing the options of laser therapy for the scarring. My esthetician and I have a good rapport, and she listened to me as I rambled on about the trials and tribulations of my first 4.5 months of the year, while she stretched and prodded my nose. After a few minutes of my lamentations, she gave me her verdict. Your nose isn't ready for lasering yet, but might I interest you in some cheap Botox as a consolation prize for all your troubles? Well, heck yes, I basically yelled in her face. I want to walk out of here looking better somehow. After she had finished the procedure, she handed me a heart-shaped, rhinestone-encrusted mirror to inspect her fine work. Oh, wow. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I lied through a phony grin as I handed the mirror back to her. You're welcome, she smiled cheerfully as she lightly bonked me on the head with the rhinestone mirror, as though it were her magic wand. I now looked as though I had been attacked by a swarm of famished mosquitoes. Raised red welts oozing with blood smattered across my brow. I was no longer concerned about the scar on my nose. Success. Just 5 minutes into my drive home, and I received a loud buzzing alert on my phone. I supposed it was just an Amber Alert, but I checked at the next stoplight just to be sure. Tornado alert, it read. Take shelter now. A tornado? Really? In Houston? I muttered. Well, I'm heading home now. I should probably just take shelter there. I looked out the windows in all directions and couldn't see anything out of the ordinary to call home about. It had been gloomy all day. Unsure of which direction this tornado was coming from or headed to, I continued on my normal route home. As I reached the top of the overpass, heading north over Memorial Drive, it revealed itself, a slate gray wall of wind blanketing the Houston Heights. Oh, fuck, I blurted wide-eyed. I'm driving right into this bitch. Traffic inched over the pass as the wind began to barrel over our cars. I noticed several cars switching on their hazard lights, and I followed suit. Then came the rain, in sheets at first, then in blankets. And we all switched on our wipers as high as they could go, though it barely made any difference. This wind was unlike anything I had ever experienced before, and I began to feel a sense of panic, no, terror, rising from deep within me. A cocktail of cortisol combined with adrenaline coursed through my bloodstream. Once I'd made it over the pass, I turned onto the nearest side street. I thought perhaps it would be better to use the neighborhood houses as a wind barrier. I slowed to a stop at the first stop sign and waited. The wind and rain made it impossible to see more than a few inches beyond my windshield. A car to my right rolled to a stop, as did two others behind them, just as I glimpsed the possibility of my worst nightmare. Just then, a huge wall of wind slammed into us as we all heard the loud snap of splintering wood. Through sheets of rain and flying debris, I could see the oak tree to my left had partially dislodged its roots and had fallen across the road, now blocking one route home. I couldn't decipher if the roaring sound was wind or if it was thunder or if it was in fact an actual tornado barreling towards me. Then, without warning, I watched a passenger in the car to my right get out of their car and proceed to sprint on foot into the neighborhood until I lost sight of them behind the blankets of rain. Is this what a person should do in this situation? I genuinely wondered. I had begun to shake with fear. I recalled the scene in The Wizard of Oz where the farmers released the horses from the stables so they could flee the tornado freely. Then, to my horror, another passenger exited the car behind the first and also decided to go for a run into the depths of the neighborhood. Do these people know something about tornadoes that I didn't? I reached for my seatbelt, then paused. An image of my own corpse popped into my mind like a scene from Law and Order. There I was, a dead dodo, lying on the coroner's table with excess for eyes and a limp tongue in the corner of my mouth. Well, the coroner began, we know she expired from several bonks on the head. But what seems to remain unsolved is how she acquired all of these bloody welts, specifically clustered here on her forehead. The coroner circled the bumps with a laser pointer for emphasis. What on earth could these injuries be from? With this lingering image, I slowly moved my hand away from my seatbelt and began to tilt sideways until I was roughly lying down. I decided that being crushed in my car was definitely a more dignified way to go. With every cell of me, I yearned to be home with my family. Now, I'm not the praying type. I'm more of a wishing on a star or rainbow sort of person, though there were none of those things in sight now. I was becoming increasingly aware with every gust of wind that my life could be snuffed out at any moment. And as my brain simultaneously raced and waited for the film reel of my life to begin replaying, I visualized holding that rhinestone mirror, and with 3 light bonks to my forehead, whispering, what is it again? There's no place like home, or however it goes. Listen. Before you harshly judge my perhaps strange thought process, please recall, at least I didn't go bolting down the road on the hoof like a spooked pony in a fairy tale like some other people I had just witnessed. These thoughts and images flitted through my mind within mere seconds. Home, that's right. My traumatized brain had an actual idea at last. I could call home. Over the phone, I gasped and sobbed as I pressed the electronic to my ear as though it would bring me closer to my family. I remained lying down sideways across the front seats of my little car as the bludgeoning wind and rain jostled it about. Blood from my forehead dripped into the pools of my tears on my car seat. I closed my eyes and imagined I was there in the bathroom with them, hunkering down in the safest room of the house. My unofficial animal family and my mortal man. After 5 minutes in this position, with the gear stick jabbing into my ovary, the wind and rain began to lessen slightly. My man suggested that I begin making my way toward home so that I wouldn't become stuck in any flooding. He was right. Where else was there to go but home? I pulled myself out of my makeshift fetal position and readjusted my seatbelt, which I had never taken off. Not having a clue whether the worst was over or not, I cautiously began to weave my path back home as though playing the most terrifying game of Frogger ever imagined. Trees appended by roots and massive branches blocked most streets. All the traffic lights were out, if not bent or hanging by their wires at every stop. I was forced to change route several times when I found myself boxed in by large debris. When I turned onto my street at last, destruction surrounded me. But as I pulled up to our little house, I clutched my heart in panic. A gargantuan branch had in fact snapped off of our oak tree and was now laying the length of our entire front yard, looking like the corpse of a wicked witch. I took it in for a second as my man stood waving to me from our porch, miraculously still intact. My hands still shaking, I managed to park, unfasten my seatbelt at last, then sprint across our now decimated street. Our home and animal children were all alive and safe, but a bit confused. I was crying again as I snatched them up in my arms and hugged them. Our cowardly one who had bitten me with his scraggly yellow mane, our silly little one, floppy and goofy all the same, and our old dame just creaking along. "It's okay, babe, don't cry, we're okay," my man assured me as he rubbed my shoulders. Then he paused as he looked at my face with a puzzling expression. "What happened to your forehead, though?" he whispered. And I cried some more. How lucky we all were, I thought, to have narrowly escaped so many bonks. Thanks.